you're in the right place. This is the Eatfluencer podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Maggie Landes. Together, we are going to unpack everything about eating and discover the what, when, and how that will let you lead your best life. This is not your doctor's conversation about nutrition. Today is when you can start to love eating again. Let food be food and you be you. Get ready to get Eatfluenced. Hello, and welcome back to the Eatfluencer podcast. I'm Maggie Landes, and I am your host here. Today, you are listening to episode 32, which is Intuitive Eating? Great. How do I start? And if you are a regular listener here, I'm so glad to have you back for this conversation. And if you're new, welcome. This is a good one to start with because this is going to be a short and sweet episode. First of all, because, I don't want this intuitive eating at the beginning to be overwhelming. This is I came up with this idea to have this conversation based on a lot of people that have said, well, I got the book and the workbook and I'm following this podcast and I'm reading this blog and I'm, all this sort of stuff, and it's becomes too overwhelming and there's really an unclear starting point. So if you are just getting started with intuitive eating, I wanted to kind of in a nutshell sum up here my top 3 tips on where to start. It's very nuanced and complex, even though it's simple, even though it's built into us. And I don't want you to give up because of that overwhelm factor. So that's why this episode is here. The other reason that this is short and sweet is because I'm recording this in the middle of one of our Texas thunderstorms, and you're probably going to hear some background noise, and who knows if the power will go out or not, but I don't want to, dilute the quality of the audio too bad by going on and on and on. So here we go. Let's talk about what intuitive eating really means in the big picture. And the best visual I can give you is think about a baby, a breastfeeding baby, or a toddler eating. That is the quintessential example of a intuitive eater. Shows us how we're meant to do this, frankly, that we have all the cueing and feedback loops and all the awareness and communication inside our own bodies to be able to do intuitive eating. It's not a matter of whether you can or can't, or whether it's going to work for you or not. It's part of us. The problem is basically every day from toddlerhood on, we poison our brains with this diet culture input that makes us believe our bodies are wrong and that some external source is a better place to get information about eating. And so we have unlearned and covered up and turned the volume down on something that's already built into us. So I want you to understand from the get-go that intuitive eating is not a name of a diet that you have to learn. It is really a description of what your body's already trying to do. And you need to learn to listen to it and learn to uncover it. That's really where the work comes in. So don't be too caught up in a bunch more rules and guidelines and all these things, because that is your diet culture brain talking in diet culture language. Like, we like checklists and rules and yes, no, black and white kind of things. And that's just not how this works. So I want you to start there. And intuitive eating, I have talked about this before on my podcast. The whole framework of intuitive eating was invented, that sounds like the wrong word, but created is a better word, by 2 registered dietitians, Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, who did research on this and came up with a evidence-based support for this intuitive eating framework. And they published their first copy of the book, which, by the way, is called Intuitive Eating, in the 1990s. So if you think this sounds like it's coming from left field now in the year 2021, imagine what this sounded like to the diet culture audience in the 1990s. If that tells you how long and hard these women have been pushing and really committed to making this more and more acceptable, and understanding that this is how we're designed to eat, and that this is really the alternative to dieting that you already have. So the body is doing what it's doing, and their framework that they, sort of lay out in this book is just making it explicit and giving you that connection to how your body and your brain think about food, how they interact with each other, how our behavior around food is largely a product of our environment, and we're not listening to our bodies. So it's set out as a framework of 10 principles, and it's very simplistic to understand, although I will admit it's very complicated at the beginning to implement. Because when you start looking at it, so many people make the mistake of looking at it through a diet culture eye. And, diet culture, is, it has conditioned us to look at everything as, lists and checklists, and you do one, check, you go to number 2, check. And that's not how this is. This is, they're laid out in chapters, but that's just because it's a book and one chapter has to come before the other chapter. I've mentioned that before. So if you start getting into this and start reading this book, the first thing I want you to do is know that it's not in any specific order except for the fact that it's in a book, and we conventionally read books front to back. So don't let the diet culture mentality confuse you. And also, I really would recommend, if you are interested in intuitive eating, starting from the source, because the problem is with everything that diet culture does, they find something that's kind of popular or quote trending, which intuitive eating is turning that way. Thankfully, people are listening, but ungratefully, diet culture has now kind of stolen the name, and you see websites and you see advertisements for learn how to intuitive eat for weight loss, and shred the last 20 pounds with intuitive eating, and that's not at all what it stands for, and that is not what the dietitians who created this stand for. So start from the source, and I think you'll be better off and less confused. And this book, like I said, it's in 4th edition print now. It's less than $20, so you can get it on Amazon. It's called Intuitive Eating. All right. But what I want to talk about on this podcast today is to get you a few actionable first steps to avoid the overwhelm, avoid the intimidation factor, because you are an intuitive eater. Whether you label yourself as that or not, it's a part of you if you're a human. And what this is about is unlearning and turning off all the diet culture ideology. That's 90% of the work. It's not really necessarily learning new things as much as it's unlearning. And when you look at it like that, you can sort of peel back one layer at a time and make it comfortable, and then go to the next one. And I'm not going to go over all the 10 principles in this episode. I mean, that is something I'd like to talk about, but that is in the interest of time, and it's just a lot. But I want to talk about these 3 ideas. And to me, these 3 ideas I'm about to talk about are the lowest hanging fruit if you're looking to get into intuitive eating and interested in leaving a dieting lifestyle, leaving that chronic yo-yo, really wildly labile, eating behavior behind. So even if you don't have the book or you're not going to buy the book, these 3 things will be a good starting point. Okay. The first one is neutralizing your language. And we have to start with our language because that's going to eventually neutralize our thinking about food. And what you say, and that's both like say coming out of your mouth in words with your voice, and also what you say to yourself about food over and over and over, that's going to become the default the more that you make it that way. So when I say neutralizing your language is really this idea that food is just food. Food is an inanimate, non-living object. It doesn't have morality or integrity. It doesn't have a personality. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything about you when you eat or don't eat certain foods. And to just let it be neutral. And that sounds like it would be easy, but I have met so many people that think they're being neutral about food and they're not. And they're still using words like healthy. Healthy is probably the first one. Is like, oh, well, I'm eating healthy food now, or I'm focusing on healthy foods. And I know that we have to pick a word to use, that it's just convention that we use the word healthy, but even the word healthy has that little twinge of diet culture, undertone, because what you're saying is that a cookie's not healthy and, asparagus is healthy, and they're just foods. They're just foods. And you are not healthier or unhealthier by choosing a cookie or a asparagus. Like, the whole idea is that at this moment in time, you prefer to eat asparagus because it feels good in your body and that's what you have and you learned how to cook it, or whatever the story is. And there may be another moment in time where you choose to eat a cookie because it's your kid's birthday party, or you're making them with your grandmother, or you just want one, or whatever it is. And neither of those situations make you a healthier person based on the food. It may make you a healthier person based on your thinking and how you make these decisions over and over and over, and how you listen to your body. I know that sounds complicated, but really, here's sort of a short list of these. I call them like flashing red light words. All right. If you're saying or thinking to yourself stuff like can't, I shouldn't, I'm supposed to, I should, I have to, I have permission to, I'm not allowed to, words like that or thoughts like that, those are really indicating that you're subscribing to somebody else's rule book, which is the biggest point of intuitive eating, is we're taking the ownership back in our relationship with food. And then labeling stuff and talking about it, clean food and whole food and junk food and healthy food and that kind of stuff is just, it's not productive in getting you away from diet culture. And it's easier said than done because you have to just make it neutral, and super important to do that. I had an episode a few back about intuitive eating in children, and this is, double down the importance of this if you're doing this in front of kids, because they're picking up this diet culture language and thoughts that they're going to carry for life, and we don't want them to be in our situation where they are having to unlearn all this. So that's the first step, is to neutralize your language and your thoughts as best you can, to the point where it becomes such an exercise you've done a million times that you have that muscle memory to be neutral, if I can say it like that. Okay. Number 2, we have got to stop coupling exercise and eating like it's a bank account and those are the two sides of the transaction. All right. It's, frankly, it's like totally insulting to your body and how miraculous and exquisitely programmed your physiology and your biology is. It's so much more complex and so much more dynamic and nuanced than this totally bogus calorie in, calorie out exercise. That is not true. And I know some of you may be thinking, well, the energy can't be created or destroyed because that's the something or other law of physics. And so, calories in have to equal calories out. And if you have more calories in and less calories out, you'll gain weight. If you have less and more, you'll lose weight, blah, blah, blah. No, that is not what physics says. Physics says that the energy in the universe is balanced. We're not talking about the universe. We're talking about one person eating lunch. So let's not really make this so simple. And it's really keeping us stuck when we feel like we have to pay back, I'm doing air quotes, pay back for eating certain things, or you earn food at the gym. If we think that your Apple rings and the food product labels are like some very linearly calculated math problem, it's not like that at all. And you'll be disappointed in the results because it's just not that simple. And you'll be stuck following this kind of math problem thinking instead of really learning how your body works, what it feels like to eat, what it feels like to move your body, and all these things. Like, you will be way more motivated to do the exercise piece when you're not under duress to balance out your nutrition. You'll do it just because you like it. You'll do exercise just because you can. You'll try different foods because you're interested in them, not because you're forced to eat them. And there is lots and lots and lots of reasons that exercise and purposeful movement and being non-sedentary is valuable to your health. And what the science says is that those benefits are still there, are still present, regardless of the size of your body and regardless of whether or not your body size or shape changes in the process of incorporating movement and exercise. So the bottom line is you should move, because if you can, you are lucky, and you should do it because it's good for your health, not because you want to go out to dinner later or because you were, quote, bad with something yesterday. This is the underpinning of a lot of the diet culture marketing, is this calorie in, calorie out, calorie counting, energy balance, all this sort of stuff. And it just doesn't work. And thankfully, you're much more beautifully designed than an algebra problem. But we've got to stop buying into that because it will keep you there. It will keep you there. And you won't be able to really tune into your body if you don't have the appreciation for dynamic change and for flexibility and the adaptability that the human body has. So that's an important point. And then the third thing I want to point out is understanding where hunger fits in. All right. And hunger is a whole conversation. Satiety is a whole conversation. Fullness is a whole conversation, because those three things are totally distinct. But to start with, you need to respect your hunger and don't try to ignore hunger, redirect it, micromanage it, distract it, hack it, whatever the diet culture verb is. Your body's hunger signals is your body giving you feedback. It has no secondary reason to be manipulating you or deceiving you, or has some alternate purpose to sabotage you by making you feel hungry when it doesn't need something. We are making it way too confusing. We are putting all that on our bodies. Like, your body is a biologic system with lots of feedback loops. And when it says you're hungry, you need to acknowledge that. And you should probably eat if it's within your means to do that. Lots of the wild, crazy cravings and this like erratic, chaotic thinking and moodiness and lability around food is a result of being chronically underfed. And that's a protective mechanism. Your, prehistoric brain is programmed to increase an awareness of things that are different or missing or potentially hazardous. It likes security and safety. And so when it feels like there's something missing, i.e. food and nutrition, it is just super hyper focused on those things. And that's where that all comes from. The problem is our diet culture conditioning is that when you feel those things and you're craving these foods, that's your fault for being, quote, addicted to food, and you're obsessed with junk and whatever the message is. And so what's the answer? Of course, it's dieting, because the answer is always dieting. But the whole idea is that that's not the answer. In fact, that makes the problem worse, because then you're going to restrict more, which makes these cravings and these labile food feelings even worse. And you get into this just chaotic behavior. The answer is to eat. The answer is to eat when you're hungry and not judge yourself for feeling like you need to eat. We don't judge ourselves that we use the bathroom or breathe air or have to go to sleep. Like, it's just when you're tired, your body's telling you it needs sleep. When you are, take a deep breath, your body's telling you it needs oxygen. It just is. We're making this like something else that it's not. So honor your hunger. That's one of the framework principles. But really, without even going into, the weeds with it, just know that it's there for a reason, and it's okay to eat, and you have permission to eat. And you're not going to be judging what you eat, because you're going to be doing number one problem that I told you, which is neutralizing your language. And so it's just food. You're going to eat because you're hungry. You're going to move your body because you can, and not have anything to do with eating. And if you just start there, so those are my first three ideas. Neutralize your language. Stop this exercise, calorie in, calorie out eating relationship, which is false. And don't ignore your hunger. If you can do those three things, you are like well on your way. And like I said, there's a lot more detail. The scientific evidence behind this is in their book. And that's all there. But I want to preserve your momentum so you don't get overwhelmed and go back to dieting. I really, really want you to understand that your body works. You can trust it, and that intuitive eating is part of who you are. And you just need to start leaning into that. I'm here to help you. All right. And like I said, this was just a short, sweet episode. How do I get started? Where is the entry point? As you get more and more into this and you start learning more details, please reach out to me and, leave me a direct message on Instagram or email me and let me know what you're thinking and where you're stuck, so I can help you with, the next steps. But I just wanted everybody to hear the first step. So thank you for listening. If you are inclined to leave a rating or a review on your podcast platform, it does marvelous things to get this message into the ears of more people, which is really my goal. I am a diet culture disruptor and am on a mission to help everybody fix their overwhelm with food and live more contently by getting out of the diet cycle and really understanding how the body works, how food works, and how we can put all this together for a real high quality life. All right. I'm glad you're here, and there are new episodes every Wednesday. So I will see you next week. Until next time. Thank you so much for being here today. If you love what you've learned, follow me on social media at Maggie Landes MD, and you'll never miss a thing. You can also check out my website at maggielandesmd.com and sign up to be part of our community of eaters. Thanks again for stopping by. We'll talk again soon.